Well, hello everyone at the Be Awesome Network. I have Jim Carbaugh with me today. We were just chatting up a storm before before going live. I feel like we've already had an interview, Jim.
I agree.
How are you
You
today?
mean you weren't recording? Oh, what?
Well, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and let us know where in the world are you coming from and what have you been up to lately?
Yeah. Well, I'm Jim Carbaugh. As it says there, I'm a speaker, an educator, an author, a coach, and I consider myself a guide. I've had a TEDx, formed my own company called All Points Leadership, which helps uh, leaders and schools and businesses and everything just try to multiply their effectiveness within their organization. I am coming from Pennsylvania, South Central Pennsylvania. I'm only 50 miles from uh, DC and that surrounding area. I'm actually right in the middle of the state, perfectly between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Great, cool day today. It's 72 degrees and couldn't ask for anything better.
Mm, nice. Wow. Well, thank you for introducing yourself and we were talking about I'm sure you have a story behind the word learn. So why don't you get into maybe what was your path like leading up to what you do now?
Well, yeah, my path was that, like most people, I grew up in a small town. I went to school, played sports, went to college, and got out and didn't really know what I wanted to do and found myself flopping right into education and not knowing really what to do. Uh, I think like a lot of new teachers and even teachers who were veterans. And I was lucky enough that in my sophomore year in college, I spent some time with my grandfather, who was only had an eighth grade education, surprisingly, but went on to be an engineer. And at the time I met him, he was actually building an ultralight plane. He was a wonderful craftsman, made integral parts for people who were restoring old time steam engines, and he was an expert in those areas too. But I worked with him for a week, and that whole week, I said, I'll volunteer. I had nothing to do. My summer job didn't start, and he said, well, hang out with me. Maybe you'll learn something this week. And at the end of the week, that was the question he asked me. Did you learn anything? And I kind of spit out some of the things that happened over the week. He said, no, did you learn anything? And then that's when he brought up the fact that if I learn every day from this point forward, I'm going to be fine. And learn basically meant you need to listen, you need to have ethics, pick your values, you need to have a positive attitude regardless of what happens. And then you need to respect people, yourself, and others. And then you understand no. You need to know how to give a no and when to give one. But then you also need to understand how to take a no, understand why you got to know, and understand you can ask why. And ironically, the no has become a very important part, integral part in setting goals for people and letting them understand, because too often we get a no, we really just kind of shut down. We don't ask further questions. And as I recently said to somebody, I've been finding this over the last couple of weeks. I recently said to somebody, you are where you are because of the last no you got. Prove me wrong. And I'm still waiting for them to prove me wrong, because, it's our no that pushes us to the next yes. So that's kind of how the learn got started. And ironically, as a beginning teacher, everyone struggles with their classroom management climate and all that kind of stuff. And we've all been through school, and, you have teachers have you sign this agreement for behavior, and they have lists up on the walls and the whole thing. And I just found that to be very cumbersome. And the fact that if kids, I taught middle school kids and some high school at times. I coached high school, but taught middle school. If kids, if people in general, you set a rule, and then the first thing we do is we try to find our way around it.
Yeah.
Or we break a rule and we say, well, that's not exact. Or we don't break a rule. We do something just a little different. Well, that's not the rule. So it was one of those things where I was struggling with that. And finally, one day, early in my career, within a couple of weeks, I walked in one day and I said, you know what, guys, that's it. It came to me. I said, you know what, we're going to learn. Your job every day is to learn. You need to listen. You need to have ethics and values. And we're going to talk about that as a class. You need to be positive. I don't care what happened in the next class. I don't care what happened when you got off the bus. You're going to be positive. We need to respect everybody in the room. We need to respect the people come in and all that thing. And then we understand that no is going to be no. And we also need to understand, I need to understand when you say no. Like, again, if I ask some kid to answer a question, they say, no, I don't want to. Well, why do I want to be a jerk and make them answer the question. That's an embarrassment moment at that point. I'm not showing them any respect. So ironically, I used that as a teacher. I actually then started to put it into my teams and, the core around your climate. And then when I became an administrator, that became the core of my school, that we're a learned school. Look, we're going to make sure we listen. And that just means we got to tune in, right? What are our values? And that's always the big one. Ironically, if you and I were to sit down and prior to this, we'd have talked about, hey, if I'd have said, Lori, what are the 5 things that are like really, the big values, like you lock in on, like if you and I met in the street or we met somewhere and we started talking, there'd be those 5 things. And there are some people even say it gets down to 3. And let's face it, if it doesn't mesh, well, then I'm going to be polite with you, but eventually I'm going to say, I just don't think it's going to work out. Right. And that's okay. That's the thing we have to get at. It's okay for us not to, we don't have to be friends with everybody. But our values, so we have to line those up. So as a classroom, so as a school, so as a team, you start talking about what are those values, honesty, trustworthiness, those kind of things. Are they important? And they become the core that what drives you. And ironically, that's what drives your respect. And then what you find out is that's what drives your no. If I give somebody a no, it probably somewhere in there, some values aren't lining up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not going to find that unless I truly tune in. It was the old thing is I would tell the kids, I don't want you doing your homework from another class. Not if you need time, we'll figure it out. But I want you listening. There's no such thing as multitasking. And for years, people used to say I'm a multitasker. Well, you find out there is no multitaskers. Typically, it's the old jack of, you don't know anything and you're just jack of all trades, master of none. And that's what happens is you're just not paying attention. So that's where the learn came from. And then from that, some things shot off into making goals and those kind of things. And I've just been sharing that for the last, shared it for 35 years in education. And then the last 5 years, I've been sharing it with new administrators, teachers, students, schools. And then also it's been starting to flow into, it's really become something that when I talk to people who are in business, through the Rotary clubs and stuff like that, they start to realize that if I have my administrative team, what are some things that are really important? And then ironically, I think it was 2022, Rasmussen came out with a poll, the top 10 things that you look for in a leader. And guess what? Learn is in the top 10. You want a leader that listens, right? You want a leader that has values that match the organization. You want a leader who's positive. No one wants to be around somebody who's negative all the time. You want leaders that respect you. You want leaders that know how to say no, but also know how to understand no when it comes the other way.
Right.
So those are in the top 10, those 5. So, so some businesses have started to latch on to that, which is kind of cool. Cause again, I just recently did a mastermind with a business that talked about how can we improve our communication. And I said, well, we're just going to learn. And again, so that's kind of where that's gone. Yeah. So that's why it says learn your edge. We all do it every day. Hopefully, hopefully we listen. I think we probably struggle with that more than anything nowadays. Right. But we all have our values.
Yeah.
Being positive is really kind of up to us. And respect. I mean, I try my best and everyone does, I think, to respect each other. And I think that's another place we're struggling in our world today.
Definitely. I love that it came from your grandpa too, and that you spent time with, there's just so much value that we can learn from the generation that went before us, right?
Yeah, it's the old thing. That's why I said, there's that old argument of what a mentor is, what a coach is, and what a guide is. And I think that's something. I mean, both coaches and guides, and even mentors for the most part, but coaches and guides, you think about it, if you coach somebody, you don't do it for them. You're just there to help guide them through the process. And that's what my pap, and again, you're right. If we don't, I used to tell young kids that all the time when I was teaching, and even as a principal, I'd say, go home and say hi to your grandparents. Make sure you tell them make sure you listen to the story, ask them about what it was like when they grew up, because there's so much there. There really is. And that's kind of, I got a graphic novel coming out that really focuses in on Monday was about learn. Tuesday was about ethics. Attitude was Wednesday and whole thing. So I really summarized up what happened with Pap in the shop there. And it kind of goes through that whole process and, what prompted those things. But yeah, I mean, again, there was a guy that only had an eighth grade education, and it goes back to those things that obviously I was in education 35 years, and there's a lot of important things to learn and get educated in. But if you learn, I mean, in life, let's face it, you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, let's talk about values for just a second.
Mhm.
So, how do you suggest? I recently did a little bit of an exercise of my own values. How do you suggest people narrow those values down? Because if they're wanting to, come up with a direction that they want to go, obviously we always have our intuition and the feelings we get, but can feel really scattered and overwhelming. So, what do you suggest?
Yeah, that's interesting to say, because one of the things when making decisions, I really try to stress with people is, you have to have that initial feeling, and when we were given a decision, do you want to do this, or our first thing is always emotional. And so you kind of have to grapple with that. And then you have to pull back and get into the logical and say, okay, wait a minute, does this align with me? Because a lot of our emotional decisions, when we're done, we find out don't align, not always, but don't align with our values. So you're right. I think the first step, and is always for me when I work with people, is I tell them, okay, look, I want you to write down the top 10 things that are important to you as a person. If you were looking at another person, like, don't judge yourself, judge me. Like, if you're going to meet somebody, what are things? It's almost like that thing, like if someone said, what's your perfect date, right? What's the perfect woman? What's the perfect man? Give it to me, write it down. Okay. So you write down, what are the things you look for in a person,
Interesting. Yeah.
you know? And then from that, we start doing pluses and minuses. And I always put a circle on, like, a one you don't really want to give up, but what's one you can live without? And then you narrow it down to 5. And it's, I've done that with administrative teams where we've had everybody list their top 5, and then we put them up on the board like a splash board, and you realize that in the whole room of 5 to 10 people, however many are in the team, that all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 that align. So then you ask yourself, why are we not getting along if there's somebody in this group? Because guess what? We all share the same values.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the first thing is you have to identify them and start to ask yourself, what is it I really stand for? And then the other thing I think with values, which is important to me, once you come up with that list of 10, what helps you decide is, what do you think best describes you? Like, if someone, it's that old thing of, if someone were to describe you, what values would they throw out? Because if you can't reflect them back, how can they be important to you and someone else? Like, if trustworthiness is important to me, but I'm not trustworthy, if honesty is important, like, I want that person I know, I want them to be honest, but then I'm always telling stories. Well, how's that work out?
Like a mirror, isn't it?
It is a mirror, and let's face it, they always say opposites attract and alike, but opposites may attract because there's a curiosity there. But when you look at your friends, there's a lot of things you have in common. And there might be that one thing that's here and there for a friend that kind of brings that spice to the friendship or whatever. But when you look at it, you're at the core, you all stand for the same thing. And that's what's important. So I think you have to list them, and then you have to reflect them back on yourself. And that helps you to define them down into 5, 6. And I don't know. It's obviously the more you have, the harder it is then to look at someone. But I think when you get to 5 to 3, you really get it pinned down.
Yeah, yeah, it is interesting because you start to notice, I think, whenever you're narrowing them down, that some of them share a little bit of a commonality between values. And for instance, I think what one of mine was achievement, and another one was commitment. So those are similar, but like, what's more important to me, achievement or commitment? So just trying to find those values and really hone in on the essence of who you
And
are, right?
yeah, and hearing that achievement and commitment, what I would tell you is, in my opinion, achievement is the one you want, or excuse me, commitment's the one you want. Commitment's what you want, because achievement's more of a feeling, in my opinion. If you
And
feel like
achieve,
if
yeah,
you feel like you achieved something, it really comes down to the facts. Did you or did you not? I mean, that's the whole thing about success, right? I mean, if someone looks at me and says, well, you're not successful. Well, that's your opinion. I can be successful in my own opinion. Success is one of those things that's, to me, is a personal, what is going to be my success? But yeah, I would look at commitment is something that is a value that you can tell if someone's committed, right?
Yeah.
Achievement, to me, it's almost like that grade of the A, B, C, and D. Where's it lie? You know,
It's
you know,
yeah,
so
it's
that's what, yeah, but I think commitment would be your value to me that I would say you lock in on. And because here's the deal, if you're committed, you're going to achieve.
right. That's what I was gonna say. If you're committed to something, then you definitely reach your goals. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's talk about the concept of no, because this is something that I
Yeah.
as a what is it called? Overcoming people pleaser. This is something I've had to learn over the years, and more so like in recent years, just learning how to say no. So do you have any advice on how can a person who doesn't want to ruffle feathers or stir the pot, how can a person who doesn't feel confident in their no yet get more confident?
Yeah. It's the irony. If you look up, I've done some research, and if you find out again, emotions are highly involved in getting no's and saying no's. And it's interesting that when you say a no, there's a list of feelings you'll get. And when you get a no, there's a list of feelings you'll get. But they're not all the same. But there are two that are the same: disappointment and regret. Out of both of those, whether I'm getting a no or I'm giving a no, I'm going to be disappointed. I think that's the big thing you got to realize is when you're going to give a no, you're disappointed. And then there's always that feeling of regret. By me saying, like, again, when you would ask me to do this, if I had said no, well, then there would have been that feeling like, did I miss an opportunity? Should I have done that? You have to wrestle with that. And it's the same where if I'd have reached out and said, hey, I want to do, and you said, well, no, I'd have been disappointed. And then I'd have regretted the fact that I even reached out and asked. So you have those two in common. So I think I would say that if you're going to deal with a no or give a no, understand those two: disappointed and regret. So when you're looking to give a no to somebody, you have to get past, okay, why am I giving that no, right? Because there will be some disappointment, but you have to be able to live with that because you've come to grips with that. If you're not saying no because you don't want to disappoint the other person, understand that you're going to be disappointed later too then. So we got to get past that they're going to feel those two things. They're going to be disappointed and they're going to have regret. And so are you. So that should help you blend that together to say no. Or if when you get that no, you start to realize, like, if you give me a no, I got to realize that, you know what, you were disappointed and you're regretful as well. I mean, you're going through a lot of emotions, and it took a lot. That goes back, I could bounce it back into respect. It takes a lot for someone to say no. They've really thought about it. And we probably should do the same when it comes to yes. Think a little more about it than supposed to just jumping on a yes. But it does come down to, Lori, your personal mindset and your personal well-being. I always tell people there are hard no's, they're non-negotiables, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that we can think of that are hard no's. There are other things that are no's that are soft no's, whether we get them or give them. And then we have and you have to be able to determine that and understand that a hard no, when if someone's getting ready to do harm and no, that means no, I'm done. Right. So yeah, be different between a hard no and a soft no, but giving a no, understand disappointment and regret. So get over it. Everybody's going to be disappointed, and there's going to always be that feeling of regret, but it comes down to where are you at in your mindset when you're done. So deal with the disappointment and get over the regret, because regrets are wasted emotion, just like, worry, because we could regret anything, right? We can regret saying yes to something.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if it does, and again, that comes back to whether we feel like it worked in the, and I would say this, that when it comes to no, and this even flows with yes, make sure you're making that no based on now and not something you're projecting onto that person. And that happens a lot with yes. Like someone asks you, oh, yeah, I'm going to do that, because in your mind, you had a whole different view of where they were. And that's why it goes back to that we need to ask great questions and listen to their answers to make sure they're aligning in our thought process. So we're not making up an outcome that, when it happens, we're going, oh man, that isn't what I wanted.
Yeah, projecting can be very tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, the toughest thing, and sometimes I've been accused of that, when I've worked with people and as an administrator, well, you never have any emotions. Well, you have to pull back. I'm not, there's certain times where I'm just not allowed. I can have an emotion when it's all over. Regret. I can regret having to have said no to somebody for something they wanted to really do, but it just didn't line up because of all the information I had. But I have to explain that to them. So if you're a constant person who likes to be a people pleaser, I think the first thing you need to do is people please yourself.
Yeah, that's great
That will
advice.
stop you from being the people pleaser of everybody else. Because if you're going to have regret or disappointment, then why are you saying yes?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is so good. People please yourself.
Yeah. I had a person tell me a long time ago, told me, remember, make your decision because in the end, nobody cares. And I said, that's pretty cold. He goes, no, think about it. We all move on at some point in time. It just, nobody cares. It's the old thing that unfortunately, when you pass away, I mean, there's a small window where everybody remembers you, but then we're gone. I mean, doesn't matter how famous you are. Everybody says you get your 15 minutes, and then it's, and that goes back to the learn. And I always, tell everybody, make sure there are two questions I ask every morning when I get up this morning. There's two questions whenever I get ready to do something. For instance, when I got ready to do this with you, I said to myself, okay, why am I here? Why am I going to be here with Lori? And what's going to be my legacy? What would I like to come out of this? And that's what I make it in the morning. Why am I here this morning? So whenever I get into a big activity, why am I here? Right. And that helps guide you where you're going. And then what's going to be my legacy? So basically it's your purpose and your passion, but your legacy is what people remember. And that was the big thing I would share with teachers all the time. Your legacy. I mean, let's face it. We all talk about being in school, right? And I'll remember the good teacher, the bad teacher, the weird teacher, all that. Well, that's the legacy they left. It may not be what they wanted to leave, but it's what
Yeah.
you know, you know. So yeah, I mean, I'd ask those two questions every day, and I had them on my desk with a compass. That was always my big thing. That's why my whole big thing with my compass. And it goes back to guiding it. That if you're 1 degree off, if I leave my house today and I'm 1 degree off and I want to come to Florida, I will not end up in Florida if I'm 1 degree off. I might be in Louisiana or the Bahamas. You know what I mean? It just keeps getting wider and wider and wider and wider and wider.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure you do a compass check and constantly make sure. I'm an avid outdoorsman, and you're reading compass is one of the first things, and you're walking, you have to constantly readjust because go out in your backyard where it's safe and you're not going to bump into anything. Close your eyes and start walking. See how straight line you make. You don't make a straight line. You're going to lean left or right.
Yeah. Yeah. Such great advice. I love all of this, Jim. So how do you help people? Tell us a little bit about your business and what you do, because you're obviously now coaching and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little bit like today, but what we do is we do an inventory. I really like working with teams and organizations and schools, like I had said, into some businesses. But what I do is come in and we can evaluate where you're at, talk to individuals. I have a behavioral assessment that we can do called Right Path that can figure out, what that whole thing of what people supposedly are. And I worry about that sometimes because I think people think they get a label. And what that really is just telling you how you think. And we need to know more about ourselves, how we think. We sometimes think we know. And sometimes it lines up. So we come in and do an inventory, and then we sit down and say, okay, what are the goals? What are the goals? Where do we want to be? What was the whole purpose of asking me to come in? Again, if you look at a school, well, we got you in because you have this learn thing. Okay, well, then the goal is what? You want better behavior and climate in your classrooms. Okay. Business comes in. Okay, we want to communicate better. Okay, well, the goal is to communicate better. Where are we at now? And you always start with the end in mind, right? You always say, okay, what's our end goal? And then you build it backwards and you start. And with some other tools and stuff, we get there. But here's the key to that whole goal thing. When we create those goals, 1, 2, 3, or 4 goals, we then have to attach a habit to every goal. because your goals will never be reached if you don't create a habit that's going to reinforce that goal. Otherwise, it's just a list. Our habits ultimately control what we do and how we talk and where we go and what we do. If I have a habit of, I don't know, procrastinating whenever the monthly reports are due, that's something I have to break. I could have a goal. I could sit down with my boss and say, my goal is I'm going to have my quarterly reports in by the third week of every month. And then all of a sudden you don't, because you have this habit of procrastinating. So now we got to dive into, why do you keep putting it off? What is it you don't like about the report that you're not doing? What's the fear, the subliminal fear you have of not doing it? Because you have to create that habit to undo, because your goal is perfect. Oh, it's wonderful. Your boss is happy. And then all of a sudden the reports come in late. It's like, and then it's you're not reaching your goal. And then you're disappointed about that. Well, we haven't created the habit. I always tell people when I go to the gym, well, I want to get strong. Well, what's your goals? Do you want to get stronger? Okay, what are the habits you're going to do? What is it you're going to do now? I mean, everybody walks into the gym wanting to lose weight and get better tone. Well, if you go into the gym, lean on the treadmill and talk to people, or you walk at 1 mile per hour while you talk to somebody for an hour, and then you go, I don't know why I haven't lost any weight. Well, I don't know either. Or you do all that nice working out, and then you stop at your favorite fast food place and order the super deluxe. I mean, it's a habit, and we get into those. And the thing is, I think that would be a big thing for anyone, is write down your daily routines of what you do, and it's simple as, I want to get up earlier. Well, then you got to set the alarm, and you have to create a habit that I'm not going to put the snooze on. I'm not allowing it. If it means you sit up on the side of the bed for 15 minutes, just getting your scruples together, that's better than setting the snooze.
Yeah,
right?
true. Yeah.
And then eventually you're sitting there going, why am I sitting here? I'm getting up. I'm going to go start doing something. But then the thing from that then is, you want to get up earlier. What are you going to do with that extra time? So goals are great. And so when we work with people, we always obviously sit down and figure out, what are the goals? What's the end run? But now let's talk about the habits we have to start to undo, redo, and then create a checklist for that. And that goes back in, I have a journal for Learn, and it is every day they have a journal would say, okay, what did I listen to today? What did I hear today? What were the ethics that got stressed, or what ethics did I display today? Or what ethics got tested today? How was my attitude? And that's really funny. On the journal, I just had these little circles with smiley face. What was your attitude? Respect. How did I show respect today? Did I get some respect today? So walk in and say, hey, I really like the way, man, thank you. And then did I say some no's? Did I get some no's? And then why did I get them? And then at the bottom, it ultimately says, why was I here today? And what was my legacy? Did I reach my goal from the beginning of the day? And again, those habits do that. You got to create a habit. Goals are great. They really are. I think we need to have goals, but if we don't create a habit that supports the goals, that's the reason we have New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have all these things we say we want to do in the new year, and then we never change our habits. That's why diets fail, because let's face it, it is a change. It is a habit. You have to, you can't sit down at night and say, well, normally I have a Coke and some chips. Well, you can't do that anymore if you want to get on a good diet. I mean, it's a habit you've developed. And we got habits we don't even know we do. But if you really investigate them, you find out, well, that might be why I'm having trouble with it.
Wow. Well, Jim,
Habits.
it's been amazing. I can't even tell you, I'm glad that I have a note taker taking notes for me during this call.
Share those notes, would you?
Yes. Well, how can people reach you? What's the best way to reach you if they want to learn more?
Well, you can go to my website, jimcarbaugh.com. I actually have a chapter in a book. There's a new book that came out called Cracking the Rich Code, which basically is just a summary of the story of Learn and how to get through, how to start that process. My graphic novel will be on there, but it also lists my service. I'm actually in the process of rebranding it, I guess a little bit, changing some things, but you can go to that jimcarbaugh.com. You can reach out to me via email, which is my last name, Carbaugh, at jm@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter. I do a compass check every day. It's at Jim Carbaugh. I do a compass check every day and just kind of throw some things out there on LinkedIn. And of course, you can get a hold of me on Facebook and in this group because I think I'm actually been approved and I'm a member.
Yes, you are. You are an approved member.
Yeah, so I'm a member of this awesome, awesome, awesome network, and that's the truth. I mean, we got to build each other up. But there's so much good in the world. that, sometimes it's the old saying, right? You're letting the ants overrun the elephant. I mean, come on. It's tough, and I think a lot of the things we struggle with are out of learn. Or maybe it's our ethics and our respect that we're dealing with. I think that I look at our current journey in our world, that maybe we just need to look at our values and look at our respect of each other. And if I don't agree with someone, I can respect that and move on, and they should do the same. So,
Yeah.
reach out. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. And hopefully this isn't our last conversation, Lori.
Yeah.
Do it again, get whatever. We'll do a mastermind or something.
Yeah. Well, we all need to learn, and that you've given us so much to think about. And if you are watching and you didn't take notes, there's going to be a summary in this post. And Jim, if you wouldn't mind putting your contact information also in the comments, and that way people can reach out and find out more. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your great thoughts for the day. I mean, it's just been very inspirational. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all that you shared.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And, it's a quote that's not mine. It says, success is all about me and significance is about everyone else. So I'm just trying to be significant. My ultimate goal is just to add value. You don't want to end your last day with all this knowledge. Why wouldn't you share it? And that again, go all the way back to the beginning. It's, I think my grandfather was elated to be able to share that with me. And, that's his legacy when you think about it, and it's still going.
Yeah. Well, he would be very proud of you.
I hope.
I know. I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
I know. Anyway, well, thank you again, Jim. And thank you guys for watching. And if you're watching right now and you want to get in touch with Jim, go to the comments and we'll get you connected there. And I also just want to remind you that you're awesome and that we can be awesome together. And that's really what this is all about. So thank you again. We'll see you guys next time.